Okay everyone, welcome back to the channel for another video on Gran Turismo 7, and I am back with our weekly review of this week's races. So first up we have Daily Race A, and it is in the RA272 race car, and one of my favourite cars on Gran Turismo actually, this car, and we are at Suzuka, which is actually a really good track as well for this car, so this should be an interesting one. Standing start, good potential for this race. 4 laps is the race count. Could have been 5 laps to make it a little bit more fun in my view, but 4 laps is better than 3, so we'll take it. So obviously standing starts always give that entertainment value on turn 1. You have a little bit of chaos, opportunities to make up some spaces. We started from the back here, going up the right hand side, and now we're going to get squeezed a little bit onto the grass. We have to kind of back out there, but we don't lose a position in that corner. But yeah, this is actually a really fun combination. I want you to let me know what you think for each of these races, how you rate them at the end of each race. We rate these races out of 10 and give you my personal opinion on them. So why not let me know in the comments what you rate Daily Race A, B and C also in them comments. Make sure you hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel for daily content and live streams. And yeah, let's get into this anyway. But yeah, a great track, Suzuka. Made probably greater in this car. I have to say this is one of my more fun cars to drive. I think maybe sports soft tyres might have worked a little bit better in this car, because these racing hard tyres do seem to give a little bit too much grip in my personal opinion for this car. Maybe a little bit more sliding could have been a bit more entertaining with the sports soft tyres, but still a really entertaining race. And yeah, what more could be said about this race? It's great fun, as we're going to go for a move on P5 here. Can we go up the right hand side? Just be cautious on this corner, because the car understeers crazy there, and we run a little bit wide. Luckily I managed to slow this down. Massive amount of grip when it slides, you see, so we managed to stop it running wide as the Spanish driver rejoins in a quite unconventional way there, straight into the British driver, and we're going to go past that Spanish driver and back up to P7. So losing a few positions with that little mistake there. Now we've got the slipstream, and we're going to have a little look into 130R. Can we go for a move here? We're going to get the slipstream, go down the left hand side. Now we're going to go down to 4th gear, because this was our first ever race on this combination. So in terms of understanding how far and how hard we can push the track, I don't really have a clue. I'm just winging this, to be honest. But we're through the chicane and we make that move done and up into P6. Now we've got Rami in front of us and the Italian in front of him. Can we get a bit of slipstream on this straight? Rami's going to go for a move on the inside here. He's alongside him, and we're going to keep an eye on that, because that might open the door up for us into turn 1. It's always an opportunity if someone's going for a move there, because the driver on the outside tends to go a little bit wide, and we take advantage of that up into P5. And now we just got to be careful on the throttle through here that we don't run wide, and we managed to keep that car on the track and keep that position 5. We got the podium in front of us. We got the leaders a little bit too far away, and obviously with this being our first race, we don't really know if we're pushing this car enough, and we're just trying to gradually pick up how to drive around this track and get used to it. But it is a really fun combo. I definitely recommend, if you haven't gone into this race, that you give it a go. Even if you don't think it's your type of thing, give it a little try. It's entertaining, and I'm definitely going to try and get some VR content for this race as well for the weekend while I'm on holiday, because I won't be streaming over the weekend because I will be away with the family. So I'm going to try and get some VR content ready for you lot from this race, and I think it's going to be extremely entertaining. So looking forward to doing them videos. Now we're going to go back up to 130R, and we're going to have a little look up the inside here. Rami clips P3, and then we clipped Rami, and I think I was going to let Rami back through, but he seemed to just like back out and just let us through. So I think maybe because of the contact with P3, he decided to let us keep that position. But P3 goes off there in the braking zone with the dirty tyres, and we're going to go round the outside up into 3rd gear and now work our way up into the next corner. Can we hold this position? We've got a better drive out of that corner, and now we're going to go into turn 1 with a little bit of damage, hoping that the car will grip. It should do, because it's just repaired before we get to the corner. And you can see now through turn 1, just trying to be very careful. A lot of coasting with this car. I definitely noticed that when I was driving it. Giving it a little bit of coasting, let the rotation happen with just the grip off the tyres, more mechanical grip. However, in this corner, a little bit of a mistake there. Tried to get a bit too aggressive on the throttle, ran wide, then the rear slid a bit, and that just loses you massive momentum, and Rami is going to go back up into that P3 position. So we're going to back out of there, let him have that corner, and then just tuck him behind him and see if we can find another way past him. I do think once everyone's got used to this car, a little bit further on in the week, probably around Wednesday, Thursday, in VR this race might be pretty good. So I'm definitely going to have a little bit of a practice, get myself used to it in VR, and jump on for some racing, hopefully when I'm not live, obviously, so that we can then use that as a video content. But working our way up now into Spoon, being careful on this corner here that we don't understeer like the previous laps. And now we're going to be just making sure we try and get that braking point here. It's pretty difficult in this car because it's got quite good acceleration, so you just got to try and find that braking point. Rami obviously there running a little bit wide, braking a little bit too late, and it is an easy mistake to make, as you saw from myself the previous lap. It's very hard to find that braking point. However, that is us up into a podium position, and from there it was pretty much plain sailing. We managed to pull away, and on the final lap started to get a little bit of use to the car. The first sector was terrible, but we managed to go over the line, I think, on a 2:11. So we managed to find a big chunk of time once we were in clean air, and I think we could get that a lot faster than that. So yeah, started to find a little bit of pace, so should be well into the 2:10s and maybe even faster once fully used to it. And I rate that race a solid 7.5 out of 10, which for a daily race A is pretty good because it's only a 4-lap race, but definitely in VR I might rate that a little bit higher. Next race we have daily race B, and it is at Spa in Group 4, racing hard tyres, and we have weather. And now something I want to point out straight to you is in warm-up, go straight into warm-up and check the weather radar, because whatever that is there is the weather for the rest of the race. So you can see I go straight in and I go on wet tyres here, and that might have been a little bit of a mistake because it might not get wet enough for wet tyres. We'll keep an eye on that in the race. You'll see, you've just got to take a guess really and just predict what's going to happen. But if it's green, I would probably go for wet. Blue, it's probably going to be INTERS, but I went on the wets there. And then you have to also take note of, if it is just light blue, just keep an ear out on the weather, whether you can hear the rain or not, to whether you'll need to put intermediate tyres on. So bear that in mind. Always go out in the warm-up. A lot of people clearly don't do that, as you're about to see at the start of this race. And obviously make sure you buy wet tyres, because without wet tyres, you won't be able to put wet tyres on. So starting the race, we're starting from P1. We've got Fento behind us in the SLS. I'm in the McLaren. And you're going to see a lot of people making the mistake, and that's why I've pointed it out in this video of not checking the weather. So we start the race from P1 and we get a nice start here straight away into turn 1, just trying to pick our braking point. Plenty of grip on the full wets. You can see it's actually not really into the full wet conditions. You can see Fento seems to have a lot more grip than me, and that's because Fento is on the intermediate tyres while I'm on the full wets. We know that because we checked the replay. And yeah, he's got a lot more grip than me in these conditions at the moment. So at the moment, it's pretty clear that the intermediates are the better tyre. Now, let's have a little look at why I say you should always check the weather in the warm-up. P9 here, he's on the racing hard tyre. Now, please don't do this mistake that a lot of drivers try to do here. They try to go in the pits on lap 1. You can see a bit of a queue developing, and it wasn't just that driver. There was quite a few drivers that tried to do this. Now, the reason I say please don't try and do this, because it doesn't work. Gran Turismo brought this in, I'm pretty sure it was even on GT Sport. You couldn't pit on the opening lap because otherwise you could take advantage of a compulsory tyre usage and lose less time. So you can't change tyres. All that happens is you basically give yourself a drive-through penalty like these drivers are doing here and lose even more time. So they've gone through the pits, and now they're going to have to go all the way around again if they want to pit and change onto intermediate. So that's the reason why they couldn't change tyres, because you can't do it on the opening lap. You have to complete a lap or go over the line to start your out lap and then pit. But you can see absolute chaos going on here where people have not put the right tyres on, and this is why you need to be looking at that weather radar at the start of the race. Cars are sliding, cars are crashing, absolute mayhem going on in the back of the grid here. You can see the Ferrari basically facing the wrong way, and he's going to pay a visit straight into barrier there. And this driver taking ultra cautious, you can see, while other drivers around him are just spinning and snaking their way down straight. So we've got a Supra facing the wrong way, and just absolute chaos basically. But that is purely because you need to pay attention to that weather radar. So if you're doing this race, make sure you check that. So we're getting back into the race now, and we can see me and Fento here. Fento got so much more grip than I have from them intermediate tyres. So this is going to be a case of just trying to hold on, keep the car on the track. And I think, to be honest, Fento is going to get so much more grip than us in these conditions. So it wasn't really worth fighting too hard, but we weren't going to make it too easy for him. We're going to try and hold on just in case that rain carries on building up, because it is going higher. It's gradually getting more and more wet because the rain, it's static. So it's dynamic weather in terms of every race could be a different weather system. but whatever the weather is, when it starts the race, it doesn't move. It stays at that exact point on the radar. So it can build up and build up and build up. Unfortunately, it wasn't heavier as I expected it to be, and it's not really getting up to that full wet or over the full wet mark. You can see it's just in intermediates, and Fento has just got so much more grip. We're going side by side through there, and now we're going into this left-hand corner. Fento's going to try and go around the outside there, struggling for grip on these full wets. Fento's just got so much more traction out of them inters and can just chuck it in the corners a lot more than what I can on these tyres. But you can see, we're going to see if we can go around this corner as fast as possible. It's not really building up any sort of temperature in the tyres, or I presume that's what it is, because they're just not gripping. You can see struggling to get the car to turn. The fronts are sliding quite a lot, but it's definitely better than being on the racing hard tyre, I can tell you that. Fento's going to go right round the outside there. You can see just so much more grip from them inters, and we are going to just pretty much fall back from him here. However, now we've just got to try and hold on to P2 in this race and try and keep ourselves ahead of them other drivers behind us who are also on the intermediate tyres. But Fento is pretty good in wet conditions. I know that he's pretty much a specialist in these conditions. He's unbelievably quick whenever it rains. He's super quick in Group 4. It's absolutely insane at Spa. I remember from the dynamic race we had a few months ago, his pace was unreal. But going through this really fast left-hand corner up here, you can see you're going to have to give it a lift in these conditions, and it's actually getting close to the full wet mark there, and Fento runs a little bit wide there. That's going to give him dirty tyres into the braking zone, and he's probably going to brake a little bit late, and I was aware of that, so we make sure we brake nice and early, get the car slowed down. Fento goes a little bit deep as expected because of the tyres being dirty, and now he's going to have very little traction from this corner, because when you get dirty tyres in wet conditions, it is very hard to get them tyres to grip again. So we get better traction and put ourselves back up into the lead of this race. So really entertaining. This race definitely is much better than normal because of this random condition with the rain kicking in, and this definitely bumps the score up in my personal opinion, because you just don't know what you're going to get every time you jump into a race, and unpredictable races are always good. I think I like that idea, and I actually think it's quite a good idea that PD have done this. I quite like that they've kept the weather static as well, because although moving weather could have been interesting, with a race of 4 laps, I think keeping it static means it's going to be, you know, one or the other. Or another advantage of this is you could have a situation where, because it's static, that half of the track could be wet and half of the track could technically be dry. It is possible to happen. If that happens, I would love to see it happen, but let's hope we get a race like that, because it could be absolutely chaotic. I would probably go with the intermediates if it does that, and just take the pain in the dry conditions, because you'll lose too much time in the wet parts of the tracks on the dry tyres. So that's probably what I would do. But through here again, Fento's just going to go clean round the outside. So much more pace than what I've got. I can't live with that pace, and he's pretty much put himself in the lead now, and that will be me just falling gradually back on the full wet tyres, because we're just not getting the grip out. Even though we're on the line, you can see it on the telemetry, we're on the line between inters and full wets, but intermediates in Group 4 will work all the way up into full wet conditions pretty much. So factor that in with your tyre choice at the start of the race as well. But you can see on the radar at the top right for the track map, a lot of field spread. Some drivers are clearly, they're about half a lap behind already, and we're only on lap 2, so some of them drivers are going to get lapped and probably not going to finish this race. Some drivers going for a pit stop to put the wet tyres on now, probably the correct decision, because you're going to lose way more than 25 seconds on the dry tyres in these conditions, because you're just going to slide around. Now, I've done quite a few races on this Spa race throughout Monday, and this was the only race we got that was wet, so the chances of actually getting this weather are not too high, but it does make it more exciting knowing that something like this can happen in a race. So I just want you to be prepared by checking that radar and giving you that information in this video. So let's just skip on now to a little bit further on in the race, as Fento is just clearly running away in the distance, and we skipped to the last lap here, and Fento was just in a different league there. We couldn't keep up with him on these tyres, but we did manage to keep ourselves in P2, so that's one decent thing. And the drivers were on intermediates behind us, so we managed to hold onto that P2 with pretty much the wrong tyre, and now we're going to go over the line and finish that daily race B. So yeah, definitely one of the better daily race Bs we've had in a while because of this weather situation, and that's the reason why I'm going to give this probably the highest score I think we've given a race. 8 out of 10 so far. Just unpredictable weather makes it more fun in my view. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for daily race B, and we move on to daily race C. Interlagos Group 3 brilliant combination. However, tyres required in this race are mediums. Tyres available are softer mediums, which kind of just ruins the race, because to make this race a little bit more interesting, they needed to put softer medium tyres required, in my personal opinion, because even with time 6 tyre wear, everyone is going to no-stop the race, because a one-stop will lose you far too much time. It's so slow. You're better doing a medium no-stop race. So, not sure why PD do these races where they don't put... It's like they don't understand the pit lane loss is way too high for a short race. You know, if they halve the pit lane time for a very short race like this, then maybe you could go with a one-stop strategy. But with the way they've done this, there's just no chance of fighting back. It's far too slow. But it is still interlagos in Group 3, which is a brilliant combination in my view. It's enjoyable. It's got a really good flow to it when you get going. Now, I picked the McLaren for this race because the McLaren drives so nice at this track. It's not got the best acceleration, though. It does lack a little bit of acceleration. It has actually had a slight buff on the latest patch, but it hasn't really improved its acceleration that much, which you'll see when we're on the acceleration zones. Its 5th gear is pretty strong. It can get overtakes done in 5th gear. Its main strength though is the tyre wear. Absolutely incredible tyre wear from this car. For an MR car as well, it drives so nice on them tyres, and you get so much traction. There's a lot of battling going on this opening lap, as we got a car with a penalty, and we're just going to back out here and just try and get ourselves a good exit in the 2nd gear. And so up the inside there, and then the Supra on the right side has got a penalty, and we're going up the inside of the Supra. The Supra also had a little bit of a nerf, however, it's not really affected its top speed. It's still a pretty solid car for top end, but it's a little bit slower, so probably a good little change they made to that Supra overall, as we're now going to go up the inside of P5 and put ourselves up into P5, brake as late as we can, down to 1st gear, then back up to 2nd gear, and that was a reasonably nice move. Now you can see my brake bias is on -3. The reason for that, because we want 1 to save the tyres, and that's pretty much the only reason, because on medium tyres I'd probably normally run -1 or 0 with this car because it's got so much traction, but we're trying to save them front tyres, and that is mainly why I'm on -3. You can actually run -4. It might save them a little bit more, but what I will say is brake bias doesn't do massive amounts, as we've seen. Another bit of chaos there that's going to promote myself up to P4 and then up to P3 on this straight. So nice little bit of chaos there, helped me out. But yeah, when you change that brake bias, it's not going to give as much effect as it did on GT Sport, but it does help your tyres a little bit. So with MR cars, you're going to go minus towards the minus way to save the rear tyres. With FR cars like the Nissan GTR, etc., you're going to put that brake bias towards the rear of the car. So that's why you'll see different people running different brake biases, because MR versus FR is the opposite. Remember that when you're racing. So skipping a little bit further on, and we can see that P1 was on the soft tyres, and that is a mistake. He obviously forgot to change his tyres, and you can see he managed to get about an 8-second lead, but now he's losing 25 seconds with that pit lane loss. So he just watch him drop down the order from P1, and he's keep going down. He's out of the top 8, and that's pretty much his race over. And that's why I don't understand the logic in making the soft tyre just optional. If they would have made this race compulsory, it would have made a lot more entertaining racing, with people starting on mediums, people starting on soft tyres. You have to pit, and I think it just would have led to that ability to go for that undercut, or even go a little bit later on your tyres and then have better tyres at the end. Could have led to some really good racing. But this race still is pretty decent because the tyre wear is quite strong. So by the end of the race, your tyres are fading. As we've got Nico, one of the fastest drivers on the game, right behind me in the Genesis, and that Genesis is insanely quick on acceleration. It seems to fade a little bit on the top of the gearing, but the acceleration through 3rd and 4th gear is incredible. So we've got to be very careful of that car. Now, one thing about that car is it's not very good on tyres, but the likes of Nico are able to look after their tyres much better than I ever could, so he can drive that car and get it to the end. Myself would probably be dead after 10 laps with that car. No way of making it to the end. But you can see we're putting P1 under a little bit of pressure here. It's an enjoyable little race this at the end of the race. We're in P2, we're fighting for the lead, we've got to defend from Nico at the same time, and it's looking like quite a good little battle developing at the end of this 12-lap race. And that is one benefit of the tyre wear. You obviously are fading on tyres, so you get cars that start struggling, people that can look after tyres and stuff like that get a little bit closer, and it does lead to some pretty chaotic endings. But I still think if I was PD, I would have put the soft and medium tyre required and made sure that you had to pit in this race. It would have led to a bit more fun, in my personal opinion. But this is what it is for the week. We're going to have to make do with it. and just try and enjoy it and just try and keep them tyres in good condition as there. Nico having a little look down the right hand side, braking late. We can brake a little bit later as well because this McLaren is very good on the brakes. So we're trying to defend from Nico whilst trying to attack P1. We've got 2 laps to go in this race and we're trying to figure out a way to get past P1 at the same time as looking in that mirror all the time. Now, I did know that Genesis was going to start fading on the tyres probably a little bit more than the McLaren on this last few laps because it does struggle on tyres compared to the McLaren. McLaren, in my view, is probably the best car for tyre wear at the moment, I would probably say, for this race, because it keeps the front tyres for these corners. You can see we can carry quite a lot of speed still through these corners. The rear right is fading, but with this current tyre model that I do think possibly need to change, you can run them tyres pretty much down to the red, and even when they're on red you can still drive the car. I think maybe that could be altered slightly so that it starts getting a lot harder to find any sort of pace with, and they become a little bit more sketchy, so it's a bigger risk to run the tyres that low. That might then force people into a strategy of pitting. So another thing that PD probably will be working on, I think, with regards to the tyres is a new tyre model, because I don't think they want the tyres to be doing what they're doing at the moment. When they're completely red, they're completely drivable still. They just lose a bit of pace. So now P1 going defensive there, goes back to the right hand side of the track and just leaves the door wide open and doesn't even brake late. So nice easy move for us. And also Nico there was going up the inside, and I don't think he saw him, but he'd left the door so far open without defending it. He's just lost himself 2 positions. A little bit too generous with that corner. I would have been defending that a lot more aggressively on the inside. But Nico is now going to go down the right hand side and try and get the outside. But again, his car just doesn't really have the ability of pacing the corners at the moment because his tyres are probably shot on the front end. His rear tyres will be probably in better condition than mine, but his front tyres will be fading massively. So through this section now, you can see as we go through here, we can start building up a little bit of a gap, and that's not because I'm a faster driver, that's purely because I've got better tyres than Nico, and the McLaren is very good in this section of track. Actually, I found this middle sector seems to be the McLaren's strength for some reason. With the coasting through the corners and the traction you get from this car, it seems to love this section of track, and you can see as we're going through here, we're starting to get that gap up to half a second, and then onto the throttle for this final part. You can see on the traction zone we get a nice bit of an advantage, and then through this fast left hand corner again you can see the gain because the front tyres are in much better condition. And then into the final corner and onto the straight, and we take a nice win in this race from P8 in the race. So from P8 to a win, very good race, enjoyable race as well, have to say that. So even with the tyre situation, it's still a fun race in my view. It could have been better though. That's the annoying part. In my view, PD could have made this a lot better. So for that very reason, we're going to give this race a 7.5 out of 10. I do think if there was strategy in this race, it could have been an 8 or an 8.5 maybe, but we won't know because we haven't tried it out yet. So overall for the week though, so close to an 8 out of 10, but a 7.75 probably would have been over 8 or an 8 if it would have been tyres on Daily Race C, but because of that lack of strategy, it can't be an 8 out of 10 overall for the week. But Daily Race B definitely bumps the score up in my view. Let me know what you think, what your ratings for the races are, and your overall rating for the week, and I'll be back with more of these videos. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Bye everyone.